And so this is a whole new horizon for sexuality. It is the liberation of the sexual energy into an art of bliss and a healing practice. And the fact that we can see it anytime we want can be helpful. You know, pornography shares the same. Yeah, this is a long answer. I'm going to get off it in a second, but I'll complete with this point. Pornography shares the same motive that sexual Gaian Tantra shares. The motive is when you get together to fuck, you get together to fuck. You get together for the absolute concentration on the pleasure of that act, that it is a sacred ritual, that it is a fantastically beautiful way to love your own body. And at its very best, when you look at, say, an amateur porn clip, I mean, I wouldn't load a clip of me, you know, fucking someone on the internet, but some people do it. And they do it with great innocence. And why are they doing it? Because they want to show the pleasure and celebrate the beauty of what they're doing. And I think that that is fantastically good for our world. And if more people had the kind of sex that you see people having on some of these porn clips, the world would be a much happier place all around.
John, I'd really like to thank you for those thoughtful and honest and courageous comments. Thanks so much.
Well, thank you for asking.
Thank you, John, for that. Basically, with the sex in itself is not bad. It's just it's being twisted. I mean, the destruction of moral values of society. I mean, I heard that a clothing company is mounting a campaign to sell pop-up bras for 7-year-olds. I mean, that's really not the way it is. But on the other hand, sex is a mechanism to procreate, so it's something that I guess Sophia needs in us. So yeah, that's just my comment.
Let me interrupt you. Sophia is not interested in procreation, and Kali especially is not interested in procreation. In Gaian Tantra and in Kalika sacred sexuality, there is no procreation. The purpose of the act is for pleasure and not procreation. This is a really important distinction to make.
Okay, thank you very much.
Sure.
We have a question for Uranus Rising.
Oh dear, here we go. I'm back to the Archons after all that wonderful sex, but here we go.
Yeah, the Archons don't have sex. They wish they could, but, you know, they're out of the game. Yeah.
Oh dear.
Yeah, too bad for them.
Yes. Right. Carlos Castaneda quoted the sorcerer Don Juan as saying, "The inorganic beings are after our awareness, or the awareness of any being that falls into their nets. They'll give us knowledge, but they'll extract a payment, our total being. To live in their world is a voluntary affair, yet they are capable of imprisoning any one of us by catering to our desires, by pampering and indulging us." How does what Carlos Castaneda say here compare or contrast with your understanding of the Archons, the inorganic beings of the Sophia myth?
Well, as I said elsewhere, Carlos Castaneda was sort of a warm-up act for planetary Tantra. I show on metahistory.org under the Gnostic Castaneda that there are at least 16 very close and in some cases astonishing parallels between the teachings of Castaneda and the teachings of Gnosticism, right down to the assemblage point, which is described in a paraphrase of a lost Gnostic document from a teacher of the school of Alexandria. The assemblage point, the luminous egg, which is called the Ogoides, on and on and on. And certainly he hit it right between the eyes when he was talking about the Archons. It corresponds point by point to the Gnostic description. Of course, Carlos's talk about the Archon, inorganic beings is a bit of in a broader context. But when you narrow it down to the details, wow, that quote that you just read is exactly what the Archons do to us. They are inorganic cyborg beings, a kind of locust-like species, that inhabits the solar system at large. They belong to our solar system. They are native to our solar system, but not to the Earth. And they will try to substitute their consciousness for ours. And the way they do that is by tricking us through simulations. So it's brilliant, and you can learn a great deal about Carlos, from Carlos about these archons. When you put it together with the Gnostic stuff, there's no reason why any of these characters should ever bother you again. We can repel them, we can defeat them, we can annihilate them, as I have done on a number of occasions in my life. There's no reason to be afraid of the archons. But the greatest advantage they have over us is our ignorance.
Well, I guess all that reading I did back in the 80s with Carlos Castaneda has paid off. Thank you very much for that, John.
Well, you're very welcome, and it certainly is paying off for many people now, as they are seeing that, as Don Genero said, all of our magic belongs to her, and it comes from her, meaning the Earth.
Thank you, John. We'll just finish this topic, last couple of questions.
Sure.
I've got a two-part question. My first one was, John, many ancient stories talk about giant blonde-haired Nordic beings, while others talk about tall reptilian creatures. You mentioned in your previous interviews that Gnostics think the archons are these reptilian beings. Where then does these tall blonde-haired Nordic beings fit into the Gnostic cosmology, and what is the archon reptilian's ultimate plan for humanity?
Oh boy, this is where we're going to wind up the archons with. Okay, good. First of all, I'm aware of these giants, remains that have been found, these giant skulls, and the big stone chairs in Syria, and all these amazing discoveries. And I would just like to suggest that belongs to the realm of the inexplicable. So John Lash doesn't have the final word on it any more than anyone else. But I would suggest that they were just human beings at earlier stages of our evolution. You know, the human form has been here since sometime after the Cambrian explosion, which would be 583 million years ago, 580 million years ago. And we have morphed in many ways. And I think when people see these giant skulls and these elongated skulls, and they say, oh, these were the archonic beings, I think they were just former sketches and versions of humanity. You know, humanity, the anthropos, according to the Sophia myth, is an open genome engineered in the galactic center. It seeded itself here on Earth, and it spontaneously mutates through different species and subspecies. So I would be very careful about pointing to these artifacts and these giants. You know, there were giants then in the Earth. Well, these giants were human giants, as far as I know. They were earlier, remote forms of humanity, and that goes for the tall blondes as well. We don't know anything about our prehistory. Almost nothing. We're beginning to get a few clues. Everything we've been told by evolution is wrong. So you have to keep an open mind there, of course, without being too gullible. But the archons were very clear. Let me bring up the R word here. The archons, did I say the archons were very clear? The Gnostics were very clear about the archons. There are two words in the Nag Hammadi text which describe or hint at the morphological form that the archons take. They do not incarnate in human form. I don't believe that there are archons walking around in human guise on the earth. Speaking as a Gnostic and a reincarnated Telestes, I would warn about that claim. I believe that there are archontified human beings, desensitized zombie freaks. I believe that there are human beings who've completely lost their humanity walking around on earth. But according to the strict or rigorous view of the ancient seers, there are two forms of archons. An embryonic type, which would match Whitley Strieber's gray ET, and the language in the Gnostic text that gives us this description is the Haibe, H-A-I-B-E, which is a really strange Coptic word, which means aborted fetus. And the other word, so, something that looks like an aborted or premature fetus. And the other word they use is drakon, D-R-A-K-O-N, for a reptilian type. So basically the picture they give us is that the archons are a locust or hive species of inorganic matter, silicon-based, and that there is a hive like a drone class, and then there is a reptilian class, which is the overlord or overmind of the archons, the reptilians. But they do not appear on Earth. They cannot live in the atmosphere of the Earth. They are mind parasites, but they are so adept at HAL, H-A-L, which means simulation or mimicry, that they could be considered to be masters of virtual technology, virtual reality. And they can induce in the human mind hallucinations and delusions which are so convincingly real. This is why they're so dangerous. They are not dangerous in the sense that they're going to invade the Earth. They have no plan. They're mindless and senseless. All they have is an envy of us. They want to be us because we're innocent, playful, and kind. We can do all kinds of things they can't. They envy us. That's called phthonos. And they also feed off making us afraid. They feed off fear and negative emotions. They vampirize our negative emotions. But they don't have any great plan because they lack what we as a species engineered in the galactic center have, enoia, intentionality. The human species has intentions and the capacity to operate by intention. The archons are really dangerous because they have no intention. That even makes them more dangerous. It's like if you're driving down the freeway going to Malibu, you know exactly where you're going. You have an intention, and you're going to do something when you get there. If there's some wild teenagers in a hot rod driving on the road, they don't have any intention to go anywhere. They just want to drive all over the highway and maybe play bumper cars. That's dangerous. So in that respect, they're dangerous, not because they have a plan, my friends, but precisely because they don't have one.
Thanks, John. So I guess a disease or the archons are like some sort of possession or spirit that walks into susceptible humans, I guess what you're getting at.
That's
and
right.
Also just a quick point. It's interesting that obviously the Kundalini, you think about the snake spiraling across the chakras. So we have to be careful, I guess, if we think of the archons as reptilians and being bad, then we don't miss out on the fact that it's a function of the Eastern mythology and of getting enlightenment, I guess.
Well, one of the worst errors that's propagated on the internet concerns the confusion or the lack of distinction between a reptilian, predatory reptilian species and the serpentine power. A snake is not a reptile. A reptile is a lizard, and an iguana is a reptile. A snake is a serpent. And the serpentine power is our ally. The Gnostic teachings are absolutely clear on that. Kundalini is what grounds you into the living body of this planet. It's your ground wire, your Kundalini. It doesn't take you out of this world. It grounds you into the body of the divine Sophia. And you can use Kundalini to zap archons. You can build an immune field around yourself to repel these entities. I haven't had a visit. I used to have a lot